Hey guys, JB here from Alpha Wolf Consulting, coming to you today with another episode of Conondale Adventures. We're out in Conondale National Park, and I'm going for a sunset hike, basically to listen to the birds, which are amazing. Just the different bird songs and calls that they have that go on in the mornings and the afternoons. You really hear the birds celebrating the day passing, which is a really cool thing, because something about birds, it's just so magical when you sit there and you listen to them. Like, they have individual calls for themselves, which is really amazing. But it's also the ambient atmosphere late in the afternoons and early in the mornings, with the rising and the setting of the sun and the way it affects the lights. It's just, I don't know if you can sort of see the sky, but it's just this absolute beautiful baby blue sky with tinges of red all through it. So it's sort of like, a thing I try and do is every morning and every night, like in the passing, in the sunrise, in the sunset, I try and get out into nature and celebrate as a way to sort of start the day and end the day on a high note, but also, you know, to celebrate and get myself in the mood of celebration for the day to come, but also to celebrate the day's passing and the ending of the day. And the reason I do this is because I realized in my life that the passage of time that I only noticed the things I was consciously focusing on or aware of. So like the moments where, I was having such an amazing time that I really focused on that time, and everything else is sort of a blur. And it's funny, because what I realized is, if you want your life to feel like an eternity, like the longest life you've ever lived, just every couple of hours in the day, put conscious thought into what you're doing. Do something intentionally to sort of mark the passage of time. So for me, it's trying to be outside in sunrise and sunset, to watch the sun come up and to sort of be there and experience it. Because it's not so much watching sunrise and watching sunset, but it's experiencing the moment, the new dawn, the passing of the day. And for me, this comes from a belief I learnt from Sadhguru. Well, not a belief I learnt, but like basically what he says is, like, don't make some things sacred and other things not sacred. Like, everything has to be sacred or nothing is sacred at all. And it's like, we can't go through life and just constantly think of everything we touch as sacred. But for portions of the day, we should become aware of everything around us as being sacred. So a fun mindful walking meditation that I like to do is basically every tree, because you got to understand, right? Trees, their roots are like a mycelium network, so they intertwine, and the trees, a collective of trees, sort of becomes like a like a neural network, sort of like how our brain operates. So if you think of clusters of trees as being brains, okay, they do hear us, and they do hear our thoughts. Now, there's a couple of really cool studies that have gone into this in Plants and Water, you can check out. And basically, what they found was if you tell a plant you love it, or you play classical music, or you know, inspire it through positive actions and affirmations, it grows better. Just to the same, if you talk or think words of love to water and then freeze it, its crystalline structure changes, meaning your thoughts and words influence what it became. So, understanding this, a really awesome mindfulness meditation that I have every time I try and hike is I consciously affirm to all the trees around me that I love them individually. So like you can do this through touch, you can do it through, speaking, or you can do it through thought, and just appreciate them for what they are, because they are you. Because God is all, the entirety of the universe, every bit of it, every grain of sand, every tree, every blade of grass. So like, to understand this is to understand that in our baser sort of like particles and molecules, and like the way I go is I go to string theory. So basically we break it down to the lowest point, which is currently strings. And then basically the same strings that vibrate in me to create the form that is me are the same strings that vibrate in the trees to make the conscious form of the trees and the consciousness that is the trees. Trees go away from poison and they'll grow towards light. They'll move from darkness to light intentionally. And they're studying at the moment the messaging and the ways that they communicate with one another through different pheromones and things like that. And it's just crazy. But what I really like is a lot of people sort of see nature and the external environment as being against them. When I was in sales, you learn how to manipulate people, and a high understanding in sales, psychology, marketing, or anything like that. So basically any form of communication or understanding communication gives you the ability to manipulate people through the use of communication. But basically in sales, you always want to create allies with people. I can't sell you a product if you think I'm a wanker and you hate me. You'll never buy from me. So like, I like to transfer this thinking whenever I'm in nature to telling the trees I love them, so in hopes that if anything bad happens, at least they got my back. And it's sort of like, it sounds all, up in the air and, off with the fairies. But the funny thing is we can prove it through science. So we are about to embark into the generation where magic becomes a reality. So like, through quantum physics, we will understand how psychic abilities work in terms of like understanding how thought transfers from one individual to another individual. Because we can even see this in, and you can sort of see accounts of it where people were like in the lowest point of their life and they just needed one person to call, and then all of a sudden that person had an urge to just call or drop by or see them. And you can even see it in your life as well when you find times where you're in need and then all of a sudden help arrived. Now, it's not that in every event where you need help, help arrives, because in all events, you have to help yourself. But it's like the energies that like make me alive. So the energies that create life within me, that create my heartbeat, my breath, my brain functions, that energy is the energy of life. So all around us, there is energy. Even right now, the trees would be giving off some forms of energy. The sun's giving off energy. The air is giving off energy. Like I'm giving off energy just by talking. So we got to understand that when we think about the energetic, force that is life, that we can't explain why someone's alive and then why they're dead. Like we can say that their liver ceased functioning, or they had a heart attack or a cardio attack, not a cardio attack, but like basically they could have had an aneurysm, but we can't explain why they ceased living. Like, why was that so catastrophic that it ceased all functions? So like we got to understand that, granted, you have a heart attack, your heart stops beating, and then it's a cascade effect from that. Same with the stroke, same with everything else. Like you can argue it away in logic, but you can't explain why someone ceases to live, because you can try and resuscitate them, and sometimes they come back and sometimes they don't. Like, if the human body was just a biochemical machine, then, trading out a brain that's had a hernia and putting a new brain in, or not a hernia, but a stroke, should fix the problem, i.e. like a car. But it doesn't, because there's many different functionalities. Because you think about it, like if you were brain dead for 10 minutes, your brain's non-functional, but your heart still functions. Your other organs still function. So like transplanting a brain should basically switch the system back on, but it doesn't, because there's more to it, and it's found in metaphysics, and it's found in the understandings of consciousness. So it's sort of like you can fix a ham radio, but you still have to find the frequency again to pick up. You got to find the signal again to pick up the channel. So it's sort of like that's where there's this divide. Well, not a divide, but basically we are a biochemical machine, but consciousness is a frequency. So it's not created within the brain. Like the brain just has receptors to be able to pick up the frequency. So potentially, like the best part about theoretical physics, when you get into it, is everything you can ever imagine is possible. It's just, how could it work? Or how could, it be figured out? So like, if we just understand that our consciousness, what we consider to be our soul, us, intrinsically me, or intrinsically you, is not actually our body or our mind, but it's something outside of us that through the form of our, quantum physics and our mind and how it's constructed, it creates that consciousness as a unique entity. So like understanding this really allows us to then start to understand, well, if my consciousness or my identity of who I see as me, not just this body, not just this mind, but the spiritual me, I am limitless. So like I am all, because I am God. Like, because that consciousness is God. So the consciousness that creates life in me is God. But my body is also God. The trees are also God. The wind is God. Everything is God. Because when it's reduced down to its base elements, it's all linked to God. Because God is the universe. Even Einstein said, God is the universe. Like, everyone believes whatever created the universe is God. No one understands what it is. Like, we're all sort of just, trying to explain what it is, but we're missing the point, because it's like, imagine this. We've got a plate with 10 ice blocks on it, and it's a hot summer's day, 40 degrees, and we're all sitting there trying to discuss what kind of flavors they are while they're still in the packaging. And we spend 30 minutes discussing what the flavors could be, what they should be, what's right and what's wrong. And by the time we get to it, they're all melted. So like, the thing is you can't describe something that you can't comprehend. So to be able to like comprehend God or the universe, like we have like images from NASA and scientists and all of that of the universe, but none of us actually know what it looks like outside of Earth. Like, we know what the stars look like, but we don't actually know what it looks like. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like, the easiest way to understand this is if I explain to you how to drive and then sit you in a car, okay, and I don't say a word, you know what I mean? Like, you sort of understand how to drive, but you don't comprehend it. Like, there's so much more. And like, the point isn't to comprehend it. The point isn't to comprehend driving. The point is to understand enough about driving to be competent at it and not kill yourself or others. Like, so like, we don't have to know everything to enjoy what we have. And that's a really important thing to understanding in life, because like, when we understand this, we unlock the potential of our life, because the point of life isn't to understand God to the nth degree to believe in God. It's a choice. But everyone believes in God. Like, it's just how does God manifest itself to you? Is God the people around you, human beings? Like, do you put your faith in humanity, in technology, in science, like in what man can create? Do you put your faith in community, culture, religion, tradition, in what we've done? Like, so it doesn't really matter how I identify with God or what community you sit in the context of like, everyone's right. Like everyone's right and everyone's wrong, because God isn't anything, but it's everything. So if God isn't anything, but it's everything, when I try to label it as just one thing, one aspect, I've now tried to confine it in the third dimension, like in physical space. And if God is the universe, you know, the universe broadens outside of physical reality. You know what I mean? Like, we don't even understand what happens, you know, outside of what we can even comprehend. You know, we can sort of visualize and try and imitate the fourth dimension, but we have no understanding of what experiencing the fourth dimension means. So, like, this is really important, because that's the trap of our mind, and sort of, as the yogics and the Hindus say, the Brahman, I think, or Brahma, but basically the dance of life is that when we understand God is everything and we are a part of everything, and we don't try and identify God as just one aspect or one way, and we accept all ways are the right way, we are God, reincarnate. We have realized that we are the creator of our universe, and we start creating. Because the conversations we have with others will create such harmony within them. You know, the the creations we give to the world of our creativity and our uniqueness will be amplified. Do you sort of see? But when we try and limit God as being one thing, we have to shut down everything else, because no one else but the ones who believe what we believe are right. When in fact, being right isn't even the point of the game. Being right is just a consequence of perspective. If I believe you're right, you're right. If I believe you're wrong, you're wrong. Who knows if you're right or wrong? Like, that's one of the things, is like, there's no absolute in the universe. There's, like, anyone who tells you there's absolute in anything, like, tell me there's absolute in gravity. There's absolute in gravity until we find something that doesn't fit in, that we don't understand. Like, there's so the thing is we shouldn't walk through life, okay, really focusing in on how we're right and others are wrong. We should always have an understanding that we're right and they're right. Everyone's right. Now, that doesn't mean people can just act however they want to act and do whatever they want to do. We all inherently know what's right and wrong, because it's what makes us feel good or bad inside, you know? Like, I don't care who you are, unless you're a, you know, a sociopath or a psychopath. Like, getting any sexual sexual pleasure from violence or pain or anything like that is a learnt skill. Getting, you know, like, aggression is a learnt skill. Do you ever see kids that are, you know, 2-3 months old walking around trying to stab each other and bash each other? It's all learnt. Like, everything about us that we see as being what inherently makes us up is a learnt sort of behavior. So, like, narcissism is a learnt behavior, and, you know, all these different things. And when we take that into consideration, it's like it's very valuable because that just allows us to strip back and understand, well, what is being my best authentic self? Is my best authentic self a highly aggressive person with a temper? Is my best authentic self a highly narcissistic person who has no ability to see the destruction that they create? Like, is it to be a highly codependent person where I can't make decisions without validation of other people and I have to appease and please every other person to feel good about myself or to feel worthy? And that's a very important thing, because when we realize when we realize these traps that we may fall into, in terms of, like, if we, like, for example, my grandfather was highly narcissistic, like the biggest wanker in town. He thought he was the top shit and everything he said was right, and if you didn't agree with him, he would berate you down. If you said use in any form of a sentence, not talking about female sheep, he'd say, use is a fucking female sheep. Talk fucking English. You know? And shit like that. So, like, you don't see how the conditioning of you being exposed to that behavior again and again and again over a long duration of time has on molding and conditioning behavioral responses within you, ways of approaching and dealing with things. And that's the problem, is a lot of the negative traits that make up us, okay, and the good traits are created during our adolescent and childhood years. So the thing is with those negative traits, well, we've got to strip them back and remove them. But first we've got to become identified to them or aware of them. Because unless you become aware of like negative behaviors, like especially narcissistic ones, because the problem with narcissistic behaviors is you learn how to convince yourself that you are right and everyone else is wrong, because that's what they do and that's how they win every argument. So you learn this is how you win arguments, this is how you win things. And you know, it's not good, because like ignorance is acceptable to a point, and then you know you're now just being self-destructive. You know, like for me, I was highly self-destructive with anger and aggression. Not bad, but like I always felt I needed to hold on to it and keep it in case I needed to use it. But I couldn't see that if I'm always holding on to anger and aggression, like the energy and the feeling people get around me is one of like intimidation, or well, not so much intimidation, but people feel nervous around you because they don't know what's going to make you snap. And that's what narcissists do, is that's how they are, is because they hold on to all of the negativity, all of the grudges, all of the negative lessons in life, rather than just learn the lesson, deal with it, and adjust the behaviors and let it go. So you just got to understand, like, if people say to you or have said to you, you know, that you have narcissistic tendencies, just realize, like, narcissism is just holding on to fear. Like, it's just holding on to insecurities. So, like, when you realize that, you're able to start fighting back and letting go of it. So, you know, one thing is if you think about it, why it's so awkward walking in public these days is people don't engage with each other or communicate, right, like they used to. And the reason for this is because people are very insecure, so they're sort of fronting and posing as if they're, this either alpha male, alpha female, whatever it may be, like whatever their insecurities are around. But basically, like everyone's so focused on projecting this image to everyone around them that they don't have time, to do the social interactions. So now that they feel uncomfortable, because it feels really uncomfortable to smile and say hello to people. But like the more you do it, the easier it is. Like it's only uncomfortable for a short duration of time, but the more you do it, the more you build that skill. So the reason that people are sort of the way they are these days in terms of everyone's so isolated and so cliquey and, you know, all in their, not so much their groups, but like a lot of people are isolated on their own and a lot of people are isolated in small groups. And the reason for this is just that, like, we sort of stopped going out of our comfort zone. For one reason or another, people stop going out of their comfort zone and doing what's uncomfortable. Because the thing is we've got to remember in the 80s and the 90s, what made a quality life was comfort. The more comfortable you were in terms of like your food, your leisure, your holidays, your housing, your cars, your finances, like the more you had and the more comfortable you were able to be meant you were more wealthy than others. So the problem is people have taken a disliking to uncomfortability and pain and discomfort. So, like, an important thing to understand is if you ever feel lonely or you ever feel like disconnected from the community around you or your community, all you need to do is start investing into it, like through your actions. So like when you go out for a walk, smile, wave, say hello, and just make a point to do it. Not like you're doing it because it's enjoyable, but doing it like a workout. Like it's all about the repetition and the reps. And after a while, the workout becomes enjoyable. So it's sort of like it's working through that level of discomfort of putting yourself out there and being in a state of vulnerability, for rudeness and things like that. But you just gotta like, for this, what I found is like how I act is on me. So if I am the person, like if I'm someone who shows other people the highest amount of respect and they choose to spit in my face, like that's not disrespect against me. Like that just shows who they are and their character. So we got to understand when putting yourself out there for your community and sort of giving back, okay, and sort of connecting in with other people. Like if people try to fuck you, like that just shows the quality of them, but it also shows the quality of you in how you respond to it. So if you see it as the most disrespectful act and get upset and try and argue with them and demand an apology, you'll look like an easily triggered person. If you're someone that stands there, takes it, wipes your face and just looks at them and just turns and walks away, like you show such like high respect for yourself that like you don't even entertain people that have that low of respect for themselves. Like, because the thing we got to understand is physical violence is always the lowest form of violence. And the only time it's necessary is in survival. So, like, if people attack you physically, defend yourself, but don't be the one to attack others. Because when you attack others, you take out all other options for negotiation or communication or conversation. So it's sort of like, the thing is when people do things to provoke, like disrespect you, they're trying to provoke you. When people try to trigger you, they're trying to provoke you. So like, if you are provoked, they now have the power to provoke you at will. So if you're able to hold your temper, and this is something like I had to learn, not so much that I had to learn how to hold my temper, because in those moments I always go into a calm when I get angry, and I become very, very methodical, but I start to weigh up the options and sort of see, is it worth it? And it's never worth it when someone disrespects you, because like a respectful man will never walk around disrespecting other men. Like, you know, a low man, an insecure man, will walk around disrespecting other men. Like, the thing is for men, we know who are men and who are not. Like, you can hear it in their voice. You can hear it in the words that they say and what they say. Like, so that's an important thing to understand, is that in many, basically in all cases in life, it's not about like how hard you hit, but it's about how hard you can get hit, but to keep moving forward, you know? And that's an important thing, because especially when we're interacting with other people, okay, we should always show respect without fear of being disrespected. Because like, if we disassociate disrespect from being like, you know, a plight against me, to just being someone acting lower than them, their worth, then we're able to see it as disrespect is a them problem, not a me problem. I don't have to do anything to regain respect. Like, they have to do something to regain respect. Because like, if I keep my chest up and my chin up, no matter what they do, you know what I mean? Bar physical violence, you know, if they want to try and disrespect me, that's great. You know what I mean? Like, you can do it, and like, I don't have to care. So like, all that power of that disrespect and how it was going to, you know, get under my skin just doesn't work. And your power becomes powerless. And now I have control over you because you don't have a way in. And usually the ones that go around acting disrespectful don't understand how to defend themselves. So it's like, for real men, if an immature boy comes up and tries to provoke a fight, we can impose terror and fear and true hatred into their eyes so that they understand, and make them feel less than they could ever feel, lower than they could ever feel. But that's never the right way to go about it. That's the thing. Like, strength doesn't always have to be dominant. Strength can be passive. So like, you know, passive strength is being able to take punches and not feel them. If people were punching you and they punched like a 5-year-old girl, you wouldn't respond to those punches. Like, there's nothing that punch can do to you. Like, so that's sort of where we got to sort of aspire to get to in life, is having that understanding that other people have zero control or power over me, so long as I am focused highly in on my, you know, like if I focus in on how prepared I am, on my health, on my mental, fortitude and mental aptitude, and, my understandings. Like, if I master myself, no other man can face me. Like, for him to face me, he must have faced himself. For if he hasn't faced himself, he will easily be destroyed. Like, it's sort of this understanding that, like, if I'm not 100% good in and with myself, in every aspect of who I am, I should never seek, to go out and attack others, because I'm highly exposed as an individual. So that's sort of like, but a lot of these weaker people that are predatory and do things like this, they tend to be highly narcissistic. And the problem with narcissism is narcissism blinds you to your own demise. So that's one of the funny things is, and Jesus says this, like, turn the other cheek. Like, if someone acts against you, you don't need to act against them for them to be their own demise. By them acting against you unjustly, they have already sown the seeds of their demise. So, like, how we treat others is how we treat ourselves. So if someone is willing to, let's say, screw over and rip off a best friend, like, they're going to do that to themselves tenfold, because it's 24/7. So if you think, like, in your life and you have things that torment you and trouble you, then we can reverse engineer that. And if we do the right things that mean something to us, and we live in our values and our purpose and stand for what we believe in, we're going to reverse and build up all of that stuff. So instead of becoming narcissistic, we will go the opposite way and become highly confident and strong. Because there's a difference between confidence. Like, a lot of people are misunderstood about confidence, where they think confidence is like, I know this. Like, I'm right. We always think of confidence in terms of like right and wrong, like, he has the right to be confident, he doesn't. And what we got to understand is confidence is just certainty. When I am certain of the outcome through preparation and, doing an experience, then what will happen is, when I talk with a knowing, because I'm able to visualize and sort of predict what's going to happen based off all the past experience, a large cache of knowledge. So in anything in life, if you want to feel more confident about something, You just have to figure out what the work is you need to do for it. So like, for example, if you didn't feel confident about your body and you wanted to feel more confident about your body, I used to be this way, where I didn't feel confident about my body. And it was because like I was eating a lot of processed food and shit food. So if I wasn't in a high training regimen, I put on fat really easy, you know? And I'd get the bitch tits. And we never want bitch tits. But basically, I had to find out, like, well, how do I become confident in my body? Because the problem was, when I just went and I worked out and I trained really hard and I became muscular, well, I didn't become confident in my body, I became confident in my ego. Like, it wasn't like true confidence in my body, but it was more of my ego started to get embellished because girls were paying attention to me, this and that and the other, you know? So like, I wasn't actually building self-worth and confidence within myself in that context. It was more of, I was, you know, sort of trying to outperform and outcompete other guys, be more ripped, be in more shape, have bigger muscles, all this stuff. And it's not like, that's just false confidence, because I'm just trying to imitate others. Whereas when I found confidence in myself, like in my body, was when I knew what work I needed to do to maintain and upkeep my body to a good shape, and I knew what diet I needed. And that's all it is. Because once you, and everyone knows all of this inherently, like, all you have to do is close your eyes and basically ask yourself the questions of what diet do I need? What food do I need to cut out? And then have a conversation with yourself and just listen to that conversation and just talk, and talk about all the different things. And don't talk from a point of like there's a right or a wrong way. Talk from a point of like, you know, you just sort of, you're talking it out, you know, sort of brainstorming, where you just, no idea is a bad idea, there's no judgment, because you don't want to be judging yourself. Because the problem is, when you judge yourself with internal talk, when you're talking to yourself, so like you're talking to yourself and you're like, oh, I need to stop, you know, going to Macca's, eating pizza. And now I'm talking to myself negatively and making myself feel bad for all the times I did it, which creates negative attachments to where the Macca's and the pizza become my, like my guilty pleasure, or the drugs or the alcohol or whatever. Like, this is just what happens when we do negative talk, because we get these psychological conditioning. Well, not psychological conditioning, but we get associations. So if something is bad for me, when I feel negative about myself and self-destructive, I seek to do the bad things. So like, if I see smoking as being bad, when I feel negative emotions or stressed, I feel like I need to smoke, you know, to fill that gap, that void. So like, we just got to understand that there's no judgment when we are like talking to ourselves. It's sort of like we talk to ourselves and we talk to God as if we're equals, sort of a thing. Humbly, respectfully, and we listen and we believe them. So like, if I talk to myself and I ask myself, what exercise do I need to do to get into the best shape of my life? Well, I got to listen to the advice from myself and believe that it's right, or it's possible, or it's correct. Because if I don't believe, it will sort of never be my way. You know what I mean? Like I won't do it because I won't think it's the right way. So it's very, very important to just understand some of these fundamental foundations of communication and language that really help us in like sort of navigating ourselves so that we're not implanting, negative subconscious, behavioral traits or like compulsive behavioral traits. So, unconscious compulsive behavioral traits or behaviors. Like we've got to really understand that like the goal when we talk to ourselves and others is to minimize any damage that can be done. Because if I talk to you in a positive way with the intention of, you always feeling good and happy and feeling positive, well, you're going to feel that way when you talk with me. So you're going to feel better about me. You're going to want to be around me more. You're going to want to like help me out and things like that. So it's sort of like if I'm uplifting others instead of bringing them down with how I talk and the energy and how I interact, well then those people, one, are going to feel very sort of, personally empowered by me and want to help me, but they'll also want to help other people. So the more good deeds and kind acts that we do and kind words, the more that other people will replicate and reenact. And that's really how we all together as a collective can change the world in terms of being able to, empower each other and live our best lives, and sort of how everyone can have their own slice of heaven here on earth. All right, well, that's going to finish off this episode, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks so much. Bye.